Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Recently, we had another one of these beta white males participate in the assault of a black woman in a parking lot. And as I take a critical look at the actions in this incident, they fit right in line with the pattern and profile of the spectrum of violent behaviors I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. Now, in this incident in Texas, we had your 30-year-old Austin Sheffield go out here and assault a 24-year-old woman who he claims was driving the wrong way down a street and stopped her vehicle. And this individual just approached her car and asked her to move because she was blocking a parking lot exit. And as a result, an altercation began when the woman attempted to call 911, and your Sheffield decided to slap the phone out of her hand. Now that right there showed that your Sheffield was not interested in any sort of problem solving, because this is another problem with your beta male. In many cases, they will try to play the so-called sheriff of things like private parking spaces, and they do this because they feel like their smooth world is being threatened, and they want to go out here and remove whatever they believe the problem is. Now, if this woman was to have called 911, that would have solved the problem constructively. But your beta male, they don't want to solve problems constructively. What they want to do is end what they believe is a threat. Now, I believe that this Sheffield felt threatened by this black woman, and that's why he escalated his behavior to these violent levels. Now, your Sheffield, he claims that he was acting in self-defense, but if he wanted to defend, he would not have escalated things had he been acting in self-defense, because the slapping the phone out of the woman's hands, once he did that, he escalated the incident into a felony assault, because that's when the woman decided to defend herself by pepper spraying the man and breaking the back of his windshield, because that's what happens when you escalate things. And that's what happens when your beta male goes out here and tries to call himself solving a problem he doesn't need to solve. Because this Sheffield, he is participating in what I call textbook white knight behavior. He's going to be the knight who guards the parking lot. And again, that's not his job, similar to the way it wasn't the job of the 65-year-old man who decided to go out here and police the Target parking lot, nor was it the job of the man who murdered Marquise McLaughlin. Again, this is a problem, it seems, and a pattern of a problem with these beta males as related to private territory. And again, they only want to go out here and police this private territory because it threatens their smooth world. When it comes down to these incidents, these individuals could easily just let law enforcement do their job, but they're not going to let law enforcement do their job because they believe that their smooth world is being threatened, and they want to eliminate the threat to their smooth world. And I believe that this Austin Sheffield felt like his smooth world was being threatened because there was a black woman coming into his territory, and he wanted to put the black woman in her place. And that's why he escalated his behavior to those violent levels, because when she decided to call 911, that should have been the end of it. But because he wanted to escalate things to put the black woman in her place, that's why he slapped the phone out of her hand, keeping law enforcement from getting involved, and decided to take the law into his own hands using closed fists on this black woman and beating her down, all because he wanted to show her where she belonged. Because that's what beta males want to do. They want to show you where your place is in the territory, and they want to show that they have power over the territory. And that's why this individual used racial slurs against the woman, and that's why he got violent the way he did. Because when it comes down to a lot of these white supremacists, they are beta males, and they go out here and they use this type of violent behavior and violent language because they feel that their smooth world, which is supposed to be all white and all perfect, and no blacks are supposed to come in their place and territory, and if they do, they believe they have the right to use physical force to make those blacks go be in their place. And this is a form of terrorism, and this is what this man was doing to this black woman. He was terrorizing her in an effort to send a message to her with this assault. So this incident, as I see it, this is a incident of racial violence, and it shows, again, how dangerous these beta males are and what extremes they go to go out here and deal with minor problems, because this is what your beta male does. He does not understand what boundaries are, and he doesn't understand how to do things like think critically or problem solve. And because this beta male did not know how to think critically in a situation, he wound up escalating a situation to a level where he wound up escalating the problems and then wound up committing such a horrific act of violence that he not only put this black woman's life at risk, he wound up destroying his own life because he wound up getting arrested, and then he wound up losing his job as the end result of this. And this is all, again, textbook behavior for your beta male, because your beta male, he just does not know where the boundaries are. He does not know how to think critically, and he does not know how to think long term about important things as related to the intangibles of his manhood, things like his freedom, his safety, and his health, because this individual, he wound up putting his own freedom, health, and safety at risk, and he put this black woman's health and safety at risk over a trivial matter. All he had to do in this case was, again, let law enforcement deal with this situation. And if this person was blocking a parking lot exit, all he had to do was let the security of the parking lot deal with that situation. And this seems to be a pattern as related to these beta males, whether they be George Zimmerman, the man who murdered Marquise McLaughlin, or the man who shot and paralyzed a black man over a parking space. These beta males, they want to go out here and play the sheriff of private property, and this is private property they do not even own. And because they want to play the sheriff of this property, they wind up putting other people's lives at risk with their escalation of violent behavior and participating in this spectrum of violent behaviors. And this is something people need to start thinking critically about, because when you have beta males out here participating in this behavior, this is a ticking time bomb. And it's also, if you own a business or a piece of property, this individual is putting you at risk for liability, because his behavior can not only cost a person their life, it can cost you millions of dollars in a lawsuit, because this beta male just does not understand how to use logic and reason. They don't know how to, again, think critically, and they do not know how to diffuse a situation, because if this individual had stopped their vehicle for just a couple of seconds, you don't really need to ask them to move in many cases. All you have to do is let them see what they're going to do, and then if they stay too long, again, you can just let law enforcement deal with the person, not go out here and take the law into your own hands. But beta males, they don't know how to do this. They don't know how to just let things go, and they don't know how to put periods at the end of things and let others step in where they need to step in. No, they want to be the hero, and because they want to be the hero and get their world smooth again, that's why they wind up making things rougher for themselves in the future. Now, this incident also shows another deeply troubling thing about this man crisis as related to black women, because a lot of black women, they will say that they need the protection of black men, but this incident shows what happens when you push your black men away, because then it leaves you vulnerable to beta males like this. And these beta males, because again, they have no discipline, no self-control, and do not know how to control their emotions, you wind up vulnerable as a result of these males, because there's nobody there to protect you. And the reason why there is nobody there to protect black women is because they, in the 60s and the 70s, pushed all the black men out of their lives and out of their communities as leaders and authority figures. And because they did not want to submit to black men, this is why we have this young woman in the incident that she was in, where she wound up putting her life in jeopardy, because there was nobody there to protect this 24-year-old young woman who was out here probably drunk, driving the wrong way, because she did not have a man there to protect her and do things like let her know, look, you don't need to be out here drinking and driving. There was nobody there to provide her with protection. And this is what happens when you wind up with no man around to protect you. You wind up vulnerable to these predators out here, like these beta males, and you wind up becoming a victim of violence from these beta males. And that's what happens, again, when you abandon your man in your community. And this is what happens when there are no men in the community overall. Because without fathers in the home, this is why we have beta males out here participating in a spectrum of violent behaviors, and why we have females out here with no man to protect them at all. And this all ties into the man crisis that is a major part of America, because over the last 50 years, we have devalued fathers, we have devalued male authority, we have devalued male leadership. And because we have devalued fathers, male authority, and male leadership, this is why we're seeing people going out here and getting into incidents like this, where you have a man assaulting a black woman over something trivial, over a parking lot, or standing in front of a parking lot, or in the case of the 65-year-old man, he's going to shoot a man over a handicapped parking space, or in the case of your Marquise McLaughlin, that a man is going to be murdered over a handicapped parking space, or your George Zimmerman, who decided he was going to take the law in his own hands and murder your Trayvon Martin. The reason why we have all of these males who do not know how to problem solve is because there's no fathers in the home, and because there's no fathers in the home, this is why men are going off the rails, and this is why America is in crisis, because we don't have any men to go out here and stand up to be leaders, protectors, and providers, because those things most people didn't want in the 60s, because they did not want male authority over them, and they didn't want male leadership. And in that case, we wound up outside of God's natural order, and that's why we have the chaos going on right now, where these beta males are participating in a spectrum of violent behaviors and putting everybody's life in jeopardy. I said we're going to see a lot more of these behaviors in the future, and we're going to see an escalation of this violence. And this incident right here is another textbook example of the escalation of violence from these beta males, and incidents I talk about in depth in my book, The Man Crisis. If you want to get a copy of The Man Crisis to learn more about the reasons why your men like your Austin Sheffield participate in these violent behaviors, you can pick up a copy of The Man Crisis in paperback or ebook on Kindle, Smashwords, the iBookstore, or Barnes & Noble's Nook. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.